Well, welcome to the RK and PS. This is the PS cabin here. The Fish and Game on it now. It was owned by Pete Slaughter. It was homesteaded by Pete Slaughter. And then the RK property, I guess, was homesteaded by the Cleveland family, Carl Cleveland's dad. It was owned by Bud Wiltbank first, who ran it with Ken Pike, and they had it for about 10 years, and then Emer and Esther had it for 16, and then the Bunnells had it for about 7, and now it's been bought and traded to the Forest Service and is going to be turned back to its natural state. But even after it's returned, there'll be many memories that were made here by a lot of different kids, and even a lot of the different Wiltbanks. We always thought about the RKs, you had to stop and open the gate to open and leave, but even that brings back lots of memories. Whoever would get out to get the gate, they'd get out and go around, then somebody would say, "Leave him, Daddy, leave him." And that always was a family joke about whoever went to get the gate. Gonna get the gate. "Leave him, Daddy, leave him." Shall we leave you, Tiffy? Tiffany. Hi, Tiffy. To decide where to start to talk about the RK, this is the little home creek that runs behind it, behind the PS Ranch. We used to go down there a lot and go over to the Black River and check on the beaver dams. They'd always build big dams on Black River, and in the spring they'd wash out. We'd have to go down and check on them and see where the new dams were. That was one of our first rituals in the spring, was go check on the beaver dams. The original log cabins were built by Walter and Bud and even Emer, although I think Emer was too little to do a whole lot of the work, but Bud put a lot of sweat, blood, and tears into the original part, which was these 3 cabins here in the main house. And then later we added front porches to each of them. The front porches have been taken off now by Ellis as he's getting ready to move them over to his place down on the old Cleveland place. And then we moved in the Maverick cabin and used it for a run over, usually boys. And we've taken the front porch of it off now, getting ready to move it. And then the Bunnells moved over the part of the old original homestead house, which was built across the meadow, and then we took it apart and moved it over towards the barn for a granary, and then they moved it over here and used it, and then added a porch, which we've taken off because its new home is going to be over to Sprucedale also. As we come along the road here and enter into the ranch, I think about the many times that different groups of kids would come in and from all over, and I'm sure they were very excited and scared and homesick, and the different experiences. It would take hours and hours to tell even a part of the different kids that came and left part of them and took part of us home with them. And we still get letters from these kids, some of them, and it's always neat to hear what they're doing and the things that they remember about the RK. And then the Bunnells too will have their memories of the days they spent here and running the ranch. The little homestead cabin is gonna probably be the bunkhouse over to Sprucedale for the boys that work over there. The Maverick cabin was one of the ones that were moved in from the town of Maverick. Walter and Faye moved them over and left this one here for us to use. It was originally down on the other side of the main house, and then we moved it over here so that we could use it. Here's Dad out here. He's not feeling very good today. His tummy's bothering him. In the boys' cabin, some of the wranglers were Russell Chadwick and Kurt Schoberg. We had Todd Duncan and Bruce Duncan. Also, Harpo was a counselor one year, and Mark Hudson. Bryke, I think, was the first one, and Hank Rogers worked for us. And then, of course, our own kids were wranglers and counselors. Billy and Faye. Faye Marie was a counselor from the time she was 12. And they all are going to miss this part of their life. over here, but still have those good memories to remember. Emer also remembers John Carlock as working for him. And then Andy Nangano didn't work for us over here, but was a camper, just a minute, honey, and then came over to Sprucedale and worked for us over there. Cabin was always the boys' cabin, and then the middle one was the girls' cabin, and then the first cabin over there we fixed up and had our family live in there. Some of the girls counselors were Ginny Hupp, Evelyn Davis worked for us, and like I say, Faye Marie, and Susie Illistad, Ginny Hupp, Lori Dick, Laura McCrill. Lots of good helpers over the year. I'm sure I'm forgetting some, but they all added their touch. One year Aubrey Brockman gave it to us, and we pulled it in the 4th of July parade with the kids on it, and then we pulled it out here and parked it, thinking someday we'd probably take it on hay rides, but it served a much better purpose here. The kids would come out and visit, and it was kind of the social place to come out here and visit on the wagon. And there's the old hitching post. We used to pick projects and work on them, usually at least once each session. It was always a kind of like a slave drive to get the kids to do the work, and yet afterwards I think they were glad and had a feeling of accomplishment. And the hitching post was one of them, one of the projects, and getting this little place out here seeded, which we worked years and years on trying to get a little grass to grow, and the rock walkway, and then of course the porches were all projects, and the terraces out back. We worked different days on them, and piling up the rocks and stacking brush. There was always plenty to do, hauling rocks. The cedar used to be up in the upper meadow, and we used it one year to seed the upper meadow. As I remember, we didn't have very much luck with the grass coming up, but we gave it a try. Emer's gonna take the cedar with us, I believe. Girls' cabin at one time, and then our cabin. We were going to start renting the cabins out to families, and so we fixed this all up. And we had a family come stay. I can't remember the name, but they were really nice. We had a lot of fun. The night we finished the porch was about dark, and we made some brownies and had cold milk and sat out on the porch and ate them. Seems like Mark Hudson was working for us that summer. The main house where all the meals were cooked and many card games were played, and many laughs, many tears, many big stories. The Benills added the dormer on top for a bedroom for them to stay in, and then they added this stovepipe out the side where they put a potbelly stove in there, as the room was pretty cold. But we had added the porch and the cement chinking, which helped keep it a little cold out and a little dirt. We tried to live out here one year in the spring, real early. Faye Marie was just about 2, and it was so bitter cold that we tried to make the house a little warmer. The only heat there was the fireplace that Carl Bowers had made. The terrace out front and a cookout place, and they tried to remove some of the willows down there, and I'm afraid though that Mother Nature will put them back shortly after we leave. Cabin behind the main house that we call the nurse's cabin, and I guess when Bud and Jeanette were here they had a resident nurse that would stay there and help take care of the kids. We used it for extra kids and for family reunions. I remember one night we decided we were going to scare Kurt. He'd come down to the generator to turn off the light and was always looking for something to be scared of, so we snuck in there and started dragging the bed across the floor and scared him pretty bad, but then he realized that it was us, and then he tricked us by locking us in there. A dirty rat. And there's the old dinner bell. Used to fight who'd go ring the dinner bell. Tiffany ought to be Faye Marie. She was that age. Once upon a time ringing the bell. We used to use the bell for, that meant everybody come here, or it meant Emer come back across the meadow. Was the dinner bell and the alarm system. It's going to find its new home over to Sprucedale, I believe. The memories that I have that's just a little different was we had trouble with the water flooding through the main house, and so we decided to put some cement footing around the back. And it's been a long time ago. It was on Mother's Day that Grandma and I were down there smoothing out the cement, and she said to me, "Do you realize today is Mother's Day? And here we are putting cement in on Mother's Day. We should be home taking it easy." And our tank has memories. We used to have an old one up on stilts, and we decided to get fancy and get this big one. And we had a guy build it up on a stilts. And when we filled it up, it collapsed and busted the tank and bent up the stilt thing. And then one of our good friends, Walter Watkins, helped fix it again. I remember one time I was standing up here by the water tank, and I saw Harpo coming out of the top cabin, and so I started making these eerie sounds, saying Harpo, trying to scare him like there was some spirits talking. Of course, oh, many good times, hard times. Old Dad's going in there. Him and the Wranglers and boys used to run the clothes through the old wringer washing machine. We'd go through hundreds of pairs of Levi's and hundreds of pairs of socks every wash day. I think the record was 112 pair of Levi's one day. And then we would have the kids hang them out. And that was a matter of forced labor too. And then the little cellar we built on just before we left, but never really got a whole lot of use out of it. Every one of them would be full to the brim, all the way down, hanging down. Was a new experience for the city kids, hanging out clothes. I wonder if they still remember it. Pike's Mansion, we called it. I guess the man that worked for Bud was going to make it into his cabin, and his name was Pike. And they had the logs and everything finished, the floor and the roof, but the tin leaked pretty badly. Emer said that he thought maybe some of the kids had helped put it on, and so him and the Wranglers fixed that up, and then we chinked it and put the water in it and made it into a girl's cabin for some of the older girls. And it really had the nicest view of any cabin here. Before it was finished though, one of the girls that worked for us, she wasn't real sharp, and Scaly Fingers John Chadwick used to trick her up there and lock her in about once a day. And she'd threaten to kill him when she got out, but for some reason he could talk her back in there the next day. Russell attached to the tree to keep the little kids entertained. They didn't have to worry about driving into something. They had already crashed into it. Drive the car, Tiffy. Taken inside the dining room. I'm not sure how this will turn out because it's kind of dark in here. But we fit everybody. And the tables are just about the same. There's some different chairs. Many a meal was eaten in here, and this is where we had all the parties and things when Sprucedale would come over on Saturday night after the rodeos. And as I say, most of the things are out, the pictures and things, so it's not quite the same, but just a little something to remember by. The split door that was in the front, and the kitchen, the chop block. I always enjoyed working on that, and always had 4 or 5 campers sitting around talking and visiting. One of their favorite places, especially good old Harpo, was the seat that we kept between the stove and the refrigerator. They'd sit there and visit with us while we worked. We'd put them to work some, but mostly we'd visit. We used to have the kids take turns with dishes and setting the tables and things. An oldie but a goodie, cooked many, many meals. Had a nice grill for cooking pancakes and things, and 2 ovens. It's changed a little bit from when we had it. There was a cupboard that extended there, but the sink is the same. And we used to have races doing the dishes, and I think Emer and them held the record with about 2 minutes. They wash, rinsed, and dried, well, somewhat washed, somewhat rinsed, and somewhat dried, and put up the dishes from a meal. Let me tell you, it was crazy wild. They was running, throwing water, but Emer had a way of making work into fun, which the kids always liked. Recreation room, we always had a few couches and chairs and tables for the kids to play and sit on. The fireplace that Carl Bowers built was a work of art. He really did an excellent job on the work of the rocks, and there's lots of memories in here. I remember especially the time that we cut JJ's hair on his first birthday, and Grandpa Walter and Faye came over and saw him get his big haircut and have cake and ice cream, and the Bennells were here. Things are pretty much kind of stirred up now because of the Bennells moving out and us trying to places, so it's not quite the same, but just wanted to put it on film so that we could remember as the years go by. One of my favorite places is not really known for its beauty, but to me it was a spiritual place. I used to walk over on this point. I used to try to go there almost every day and pray and just look at the meadow and appreciate the beautiful countryside. A lot of times it would be in the afternoon when Emer would be over playing games with the kids on horses or working. I'd be up there reading and listening to them. You could hear them all the way across the meadow. I think we'll go into Pike's and see what it looks like. Here's the front porch to Pike's. The girls used to sit down here and visit, and I believe this is where we fixed Faye Marie's 16th birthday dinner for her and Roger. We put flowers on the porch and fixed it all up, and Kurt was the waiter, and we fixed a little menu thing and fixed some steak and deep fried mushrooms and made it like a little French restaurant. You really have to use your imagination. These are a little bit different than when we had it. There's the front door, and then we put in the ceiling, but then they put in this, I'm trying to remember if they put in the divining petition or we did. I can't quite remember. And that's the back part, the back bedroom. And see all over. See the upper meadow and see the barns. The old homestead house over there. Used to play capture the flag along that hillside, and then also down on the flat there they play pom pom pull away and anything else they could talk Emer into playing that was fast and crazy and wild. And that's the Patterson cabins way across the meadow, and then down by where they played kick the can at night. We divided it off with our bedroom in here and the bathroom. And Del Varquet had already put some of the brands on the walls, let the kids make up their brands, and then we let some of ours put theirs up. I see Evelyn Davis, her lazy ED, and then JJ and Faye Marie's, and who else is there's the lazy Y6. What, honey?
Right there.
I don't know which one would have been Billy's.
There, right here's mine. I said T.
Each stove had a little stove. Well, I shouldn't say. They did, but then the kids were kind of crazy with them, so I think we took them out and left them just in our girls' cabin. It looks somewhat different because they put the ceilings and the panelings in, and the bunk beds are about the only thing that's the same, I guess. But there were lots of wild times in this old girl cabin, more than I know about, and more than I probably would like to know about. Counselors tried to keep them at bay. Generator shed, not much to look at, but lots of memories even there when we used to have the old generator that you had to pull it to start. Emer, crank it to start, and Emer and Russell would come up here and crank and crank and crank. They used to have a water pump that they had to pull it to start, Emer. and they'd go down and so we could have water. Water was always another problem here at the Delvarque that added a lot of anxiety. Thing was another interesting thing every spring to see how badly it was washed out. One spring when I was pregnant with Stephanie, it was just completely demolished, and we worked and hauled rocks and worked and hauled rocks, and finally we decided one day we were going to finish this or else, and we worked until dark. And the next day I thought I was going to lose Stephanie. I was so sick, but I think all of these trials here at the Delvarque helped us to make us stronger and help us to appreciate the easy things that we have. Rocky Meadow. We picked up rocks many times, but I think they just grew back. It's still just solid rocks out here. We put this road across. One man who stayed here was going to make it an air strip, and but didn't quite turn out that way. It actually came with rent, or it was the horseback ride, and they got plenty of it. They rode long and hard most of the day. Doesn't seem right not to have the pickup parked right there, the gates flung open, and dozens of kids piling out, screaming and hollering, yelling, "I get the rope first." And the old barn, it's a little better shape than when we were here. The Benells firmed it up a little bit on this side, but it's an old barn. Then one of the memories from across the meadow was down by the river, where they would have their nightly games of kick the can. And many stories could be told of that, of people, you go and hide, it's like hide and go seek, and then instead of, you come in and kick the can and set everybody free, and they would go out and hide. Somebody might set in a nettle, stinging nettles, or in a fresh cow pie, and there were times the river was one of the boundaries, and they might not know where they are and run off into the river. And the night the one girl thought she'd push him or into the river, and he let her come full steam at him and then stepped aside, and she went sprawling in the river. And the many secret lovers that met in the willows, and just the memories that go on. Of course, there was the busky charge, where everybody would say, you know, on the count of 3, busky charge. They'd all charge the people who were it. Busky was one of our old faithful horses, her and Silky. And just lots of fun memories. Emer was so faithful to go play kick the can every night with him. He would do it. Me, I was glad that wasn't my job, that I got to stay home. But they had a lot of fun. Billy could learn he could count to 10 before he was 2 years old, because he'd come over here with him and hear him count, and he'd go, "What if I say 9, 10?" He didn't even know what he's saying, but he'd heard it so many times he knew how to count. He'd come back and they'd play hide and go seek on their horses down there, and many a horse race did they have down the middle. You can't really see the grassy part that runs down the middle, but when they saw that person come looking for them, they'd wait till they got up even and then turn around and head for the base. It's a wonder somebody didn't get killed. Had many a horse race. One of the things we always wanted was a team of horses and a wagon to have hay rides on. Well, we thought we'd made the trade. Emer traded something for 2 mules and a wagon. We thought we were finally set up. So he hooked the mules up, told them to go, and they headed for this tree, one on one side and one on the other. Said he knew he was in a world of hurt. And they wrapped around that sucker, bent up the wagon, nearly killed him. They all dived off, got the wagon all fixed again, and then this way into this big, huge rock pile. No wonder they weren't killed. So much for our little mules pulling the wagon. Then we decided to use them for riding. After they broke Billy's arm and a few other kids were banged up, we finally got rid of the little old white mules. Whatever that man said they were trained to pull, I'm afraid he wasn't quite telling us the truth. Saturday, every Saturday, the big rodeo over to the arena. Sprucedale would come over with all their guests, and we'd have our kids and participate in the different events. We'd have a cook, we'd have a lunch. Sprucedale would bring part of the food and us, and we'd eat out. Many rodeos were there. Many pictures were taken by the guests. And then there were the Saturdays that it would start to rain, and we'd all run for the barn or the old homestead that we took down. And Fame Raid come galloping in on her horse, make a big show, and run and jump over the big log, and everybody go, oh! What's left of the old homestead. The old building that's across the meadow that's going to Sprucedale was part of this. This to our right as we're looking over there. And we took it all apart and moved it over here. And then, like I say, they moved it across the meadow. But it was a neat old home. It still has a well out there, and little old shack out back. And then there's this barn looking thing over here that I'm not sure what they used it for, but we're going to try to move it to Sprucedale to use for a workshop for Emer. The old barn. Lots of horses shot in here and broke, and colts taught to lead, and the pigs were kept over there under the side of it. Lots of experiences. I'd sing empty saddles in the old corral.
Oh, Mommy, there's some really
In the summer, these would all be full. Emers would be sitting by the door. Nobody better get Emer's place. And then the wranglers. And then the campers would line up theirs along here and have it piled high with saddles. Or was feeling better, so he could come in and tell the many things he remembered about the barn and the saddles and the kids and the wranglers. He could make it more interesting than I can. Just a different shot of the corrals and the barn. It was one of the favorite things. People love to take pictures of the old barn, the old logs, and it was really picturesque. Arena, there were always logs lying along the side here for spectators to watch the big rodeo. Grandma and I used to sit back and wait for our turn to serve lunch and watch the little kids. Sprucedale used to keep their horses in the little corral in the corner, and the fence would be lined with people sitting in the timer station. Different people. It's up on the hill, makes it look like it's on the timer stand, but it's really not. Walter used to stand over there and watch his horses go through, and Emer would stand over here, and his horses would come through here, through the gate. And there's the big log back there that Famery used to jump. And Delvarque would always outshine Sprucedale. Of course, the kids had been here 2 or 3 weeks and would ridden quite a bit. And so it was easier for them to show off. Then there was old Kitty Dog who used to run up and down back there behind that fence. For every horse that went up and down, she'd go up and down too, carrying a rock in her mouth, sometimes almost as big as her head. A little event here. That's their closing rodeo. We have one little Shetland pony running wild, coming down, making the bend, turn around and go back. Oh, she's going around the pole. Yep, there she goes. Lickety split. Is she gonna win a ribbon? Probably so, due to the fact she's the only entrant, but here she goes, a bucking and a kicking. And we had a little place right down there by those trees where Billy and JJ'd ride the Shetland ponies, and Emer and grab onto the wire or rope or pole, whatever it was, and swing theirself off while their ponies would go in the little corner. This was really a good place for rodeos. It was nice and shady and pretty. Then after the rodeo, we'd serve lunch and everybody'd sit around and visit and eat, and then get ready to go back. And if it looked rainy, some of the guests wouldn't want to ride back in the rain, so the Delvarque kids would always want to. So some of the kids would ride over, and then we'd go over and get them. And Saturday afternoon tradition. It's the old cabin that Emer's wanting to move. I'm not sure what it used to be, but we used to keep things stored in it, and the logs are really in pretty good shape. And so he wanted to say that this is just another view looking back across the meadow, good old outhouse. And the pom-pom pullaway place.
Oh.
Really really pretty interesting. On the back porch was like a cellar. It had a lot of insulation and it stayed cool. And then I think this was the kitchen. And there's the well. Tiffany, don't hang in there. And then there's a little fireplace that's left. And that's about it. I'm sure when the Forest Service gets it, it'll be totally leveled and you won't be able to tell what was here. And every kid has to throw a rock down the well. When they took this old part down, it was late in the summer and Mark Hudson had come up to visit and he was fresh and full of energy, and so he was, oh yeah, let's do this, Emer. And Emer and old Russell were just about had their tails dragging, but they took it apart like Lincoln logs, took everything apart, and then they moved it over where those trees are, kind of where the truck is parked, and put it back together again and built a floor and everything, and so it wasn't too difficult for the Bunnells to move it across the meadow. We used to sit over here and wait for Sprucedale to come to the rodeos and watch him ride across the meadow here. And then the long line back. And there's the cabins from this side. Pike's Mansion up on top. What these were used for when after the Clevelands had it, the Ramseys had it, and then Walter bought it from the Ramseys. I'm not sure if this is the one they traded their house for in town or if they bought it from them. And that's the little road that went to the upper meadow up to what they call the Adirondack, which was just some log buildings that Bud and Ken used for the kids to camp out in. And there's a little pond. We'll ask Emer if we can go up there. As I make this movie, you can put things down on film to look at later, but it's the memories that are special. The many different kids that we knew and got to be a part of their life and saw them change many times for the better, to become responsible and to appreciate the outdoors and to learn to work and to get along with other people. Life wasn't perfect and we had many hard times here. Emer and I did a lot of growing up, and our family pretty much grew up here, and there was always water problems, worried about parents and being sued and state and just lots of things that worried us. But we do remember a lot of the kids that we'll never forget. Russell and Mark and Sloan and Harpo, and just the list goes on. Jenny, Hupp, and Todd and his brother. Just so many kids, you just can't even begin to tell all of them and the different things that we remember about them. Capture the flag spots on the little trees.
We're gonna go crazy.
Actually, these trees too, Tiffany, they always seem so close when I was driving up here, especially when it was a little bit slick.
I know, because I remember in the
That's the old refrigerator. Laid there for years and years. Awfully close. They even have a few marks on them from somebody hitting. Old tunnel tree. It had a hole underneath it. That I always thought was kind of neat. Up here in the upper meadow, Hank Rogers used to bring his boys up from Scouts from the Valley and camp out here. And one spring, our dear friend Evelyn Davis had decided to join the church and be baptized, and it was time for JJ to be baptized, so she said she wanted to be baptized here, and so we did. I think she's going to have to try out the tunnel tree. It's kind of full of rose bushes. Part of valor. If you can't go one way, go the other. Hello, Tiffany.
I don't want to go through all the way. Ow.
Kind of stickery, huh?
Yeah,
Look up here at me.
What?
Come a little closer. I can't see you.
I can't walk.
That's okay. This is the pond that we made to try to hold the water. I don't know if we made it or if Bud did. Anyways, we tried to make this pond here. And this is the place where Hank and his boys dammed this water up so that it's forced through now, but they had dammed this water up to make a little pond right there. Deep enough for Emer to go out and to baptize Evelyn. And JJ that morning was really cold. It was early June. And it must have been, the water must have been about 32 degrees, or at least felt like it. But it was a beautiful service, and it was neat to see her join the church. And since then she has become a stalwart soul, and now instead of me teaching her, she teaches me. And give a kid some rocks and some water, and they will find something to do. The pond was always our hope that we'd have water in this summer, but usually we did run out of water and have to pump from Home Creek down in front. This was gravity flow, so it was always nice and easy to have the water there when you needed it. But you see what Mother Nature does when you leave, it washes out. And this was the well over there that we had put in, and the hopes was that the pond would keep enough water for the well to keep us in water, but it had a way of washing out. I guess it taught us that nature has the last say-so in everything. We may think that we as man have a lot of good ideas, but in the end, our works will be brought to naught. Left of what Bud and Ken Pike built, that they call the Adirondack, was a little log lean-to type thing that they would bring kids up here and camp out. And I believe that's the logs that Emer said that the Bunnells had used to make the bathroom on the homestead cabin. But we used to come up here sometimes, and like I say, Hank used to like to bring his boys up here and camp out. And we'd usually come over on Sunday and have testimony meeting with them, which was always real special. And Hank took Billy after we baptized Evelyn and by an arm and a leg and swung him and heaved him into the river. He kept threatening me he was going to. So Billy actually got baptized that day too. Hank was always full of it, but we really love him, and he's added a lot to our life. There's a tree.
Hey, Mama, look at what I found.
What'd you find, honey?
Look at.
I think not only has Hank added to ours, but I think that his life was enriched by the experiences he had here at the Double Bar K. It would be interesting to know how many of the kids that came here that this did change them, and that it did help them to learn to deal with life and its many challenges and trials. We've had kids write to us and tell us that it helped them through hard times. One boy wrote and said that his mom and dad were in the process of getting a divorce this summer. He came here, and he said that this was his only out, was coming here, and that he felt like that was what helped him through. And we had a boy write and tell us that as he was sitting in this college class and the professor was talking about many boring things, that his mind was here with us at the Double Bar K. Just many different experiences. We recently heard from a girl that we had not heard from in 15 years, and said how she remembered the good times and the good talks. And another boy just recently wrote that he's thinking about going to medical school, and said how the Double Bar K is a part of his life. It's a part of all. Well, one last goodbye here to the good old Double Bar K, the main house, ours, the girls and the boys. We'll just let you fill in your own thoughts of the memories that you've got of the Double Bar K.
Red lights go blink, 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 blink.
Oh, goodness, what a face.
Yeah.
Get back, mess. This is an eye to eye.
Eye to eye?
Eye to eye. Get back. Nose to nose.
Nose, nose.
Okay, move. I gotta get this going up the big hill. All the times, Mom, let me go get the mail. The mail is here. I'm sure it's here, Mom.
Let's go see if the really mail's here, Mama. Okay? Huh? Okay. And I get to open it. going to get the mail.
All the horseback rides along the side of the road here, going and coming. Going over to Brentwood and to Mortsy's.
Going to get the mail. Going to get the mail. Going to get the mail. Don't turn on the mail.
Mailbox used to be here with the Mortses.
Yes.
Mail day was a happy day.